love highlighting candidates, progressive candidates across the country who are running this time around, especially those who have done it before and have learned a lot in the last couple of years, because things are happening so quickly. The movement is growing so fast, and there are so many lessons along the way. I love having these candidates on because when they share their stories and the lessons they've learned, you learn yourselves. And so many of you have gone out there and decided to run for office on your own. That this is part of the process. We learn from each other as these elections happen, as the movement grows. And there's nobody I could think of that probably illustrates this more than Jabari Brisport. He ran for city council in New York City a couple of years ago, and now he is running for New York State Senate, which we need Jabari in New York State Senate. So Jabari, thank you so much for joining the Nomiki show.
Thank you for having me on, Nomi. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. So, okay, you ran a couple of years ago. And you shocked everyone. Can you tell us a little bit about that race and why you decided to run this time around?
Yeah, so in 2017, I ran for city council on a Green Party ticket, which in New York and New York City politics, running on a third party ticket is considered death. Like, it's a Democratic town, you don't do anything else. But we ran on the Green Party ticket on housing justice, economic justice, racial justice platform, and won 30% of the vote, which blew all expectations out of the water. And I'm running again this time because a lot of the issues I was running on has still not been addressed.
What was so amazing about your first run, just getting on the ballot, we were like, oh my God, Green Party on the ballot? What's happening? What's going on in Brooklyn? So you're running this time around. And of course, last year, or at this point, a little over a year ago, the New York State Senate went back to the Democrats. And for those of you who are not familiar with what was happening in New York State, I had reported on a lot of this with TYT, but we had 8 rogue Democrats who were elected in Democratic districts across the state, but mainly downstate. And they decided, oh, you know what? We really like real estate money. We really like charter school money. And we want to be with the Republicans who are fine with taking that money. So they decided that they were going to essentially caucus with Republicans, despite being Democrats. And it held up the state Senate and so much progress in this state for decades. Now we have the Democrats. Those people, for the most part, a couple are left over, were booted out. And we have a completely different Senate. So Jabari, you're not running against the IDC, the Independent Democratic Conference, but you're running in Brooklyn, which has a pretty intense machine. So tell me a little bit about what's going on locally and why you decided to jump into the Senate race.
You know, this Brooklyn machine is definitely shook by the socialists. We have 3 DSA endorsed candidates in Brooklyn going up against incumbents in the assembly. Myself is an open seat. It's about to be vacated by the longest serving member of the New York Senate, Velma Montgomery, one of the first Black women in the Senate. Incredible person. But it's about to be an open seat. And you can see the machine is already lining up people to ensure it is not a progressive or definitely not a socialist that's going to be in that seat.
It is interesting because, we see nationally that obviously AOC captivated the world and people are paying attention in New York overall, just what's happening here. And it's sort of the socialist mecca. But it really comes down to neighborhood by, at least that's what, Fox News wants to call it.
I love it.
But it comes down, I wish, it comes down to neighborhood by neighborhood. I mean, what happens in Northwest Queens is very different than what happens in, Flushing, or what happens in Ridgewood is very different than what happens in Bed-Stuy. So, your local dynamics with the Brooklyn machine, you have this machine that's been very powerful. People have been trying to reform it for years. Your campaign, the first time around, 2017, I was really blown away because you had such organizing power. And this is when DSA was just starting to grow nationally. How have you seen the change since, just in the little over 2 years, 3 years, since you've run in the support from DSA in New York?
DSA has really exploded, especially in many fields, but especially electoral. I mean, just running the numbers, we kind of have like our 2 trial runs, city council campaigns in 2017, me and Kader El-Yatim, with both of us. I think the turnout was around 500 volunteers, which was incredible. But a year later, you get to Julia Salazar's campaign, where there's nearly 2,000 people coming out for her state Senate race. And then Tiffany Caban, I don't have the numbers, but there were people all over Queens. And, she got very close to winning a borough-ride race. So now with the slate candidates, we're expecting a ton of people. We've already knocked on like thousands of doors in the dead of winter. And it's really incredible what the field operation is for DSA. I think it's the best in New York City.
That's incredible. Okay, so you've been a DSA member for a while, and electoral politics is has been controversial. Can you give us the quick case for why? I don't know why we have to make this case, but if there's an opportunity, I'll always make this case. Yeah. Can you give the case as to why it's important DSA gets involved in running for office and in Democratic primaries in particular?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, people, it's true. The Democratic Party as a whole is a bourgeois or a capitalist party, so are the Republicans, and neither one probably offers like the sole pathway to socialism. But in the interim, like we do need the more socialist politicians we have to push the envelope and institute really good laws, the better. And it's even better when we elect them over institutionalized or machine Democrats, because that allows us to open up the floodgates for more revolutionary, more fertile ground for socialist policies.
So I'm going to ask you something. This has come up in like forums. I'm on a lot of these forums, and I assume a lot of our viewers are too. There's been a lot of conversation about alliances with other organizations and other organizations that may not be as progressive, or they're like a little progressive, but they're top down and not grassroots. What's your take on how DSA should work with others?
I mean, I like what we're doing is working strategically where it seems to make sense. I mean, not all other political groups are necessarily democratically run. I love that DSA has such a strong, robust democratic process with lots of buy-in from its members. I think that's why we get such good volunteer turnout, because everyone, gets to a place where they kind of believe and have buy-in to what's going on. And it's about being strategic with, who aligns us with us on this particular issue. We may not see eye to eye in about a year, but, let's get the job done today and then see where we are, the next day.
Okay, so you get elected to the state Senate. When's your election, first off, just so people know?
Thank you. It's June 23rd this year, 2020.
And where can people find your campaign if they want to give money, which you should do?
Thank you. It's JabariForStateSenate.com.
Okay, so you get elected. What are you going to push for first?
Either a total moratorium on new charter school construction or divesting the New York State pension from fossil fuels.
I love it. And you're a teacher as well.
I am a teacher, a public school teacher.
So can you explain like how you, going from a public school teacher position, decided to get involved and run?
Yeah. I just felt like protesting in the street was not enough. I had been met to many protests. I had, done my fair share of organizing and phone banking, and I realized if I really wanted to see the change, I would need to take power in a place where I could affect legislation.
All right, so you're running in an open primary right now. I have done the same. It wasn't a primary, but I've run for an open seat with many candidates that I'm running against. As the presidential race is right now, there are many people in the field. The dynamics can get prickly. People, it's hard to differentiate yourself. I think those on the left will, and as they should, expose how opponents may not necessarily add up. Their records may not add up. Their money might not add up to what their words are saying. So can you tell us a little bit about the landscape at this point?
Yeah, sure. There's 3 people in the race right now. Myself, a former staffer of the outgoing state senator, and also the current assemblywoman in Bed-Stuy who's entering the seat. The outgoing senator has endorsed the current assemblywoman. She kind of wants her to be her protege, and she's lined up several elected officials to get behind her and a couple Democratic clubs. And, it's about competing for the progressive lane in the race with this other staffer, which I think with the help of the socialist, I'm going to have.
So what does that mean? Like, if someone's getting all the endorsements, does that make a difference in a local election?
It's all about field games. So like for me, the first endorsement I saw was DSA's because I know it comes with so many boots on the ground and so much buy-in and so much help. So I think it's all about who's going to turn out field, which is relatively new. This notion of like, we're just going to like heavy field. That's we're buying in thousands of people to an election. That's not, what the status quo has been in New York City politics.
Unfortunately, and really the Democratic Party altogether, at least for the last 35 years. They're like, oh, see ya, unions, have a nice day. We're going to take your lobbyist money and buy a bunch of ads that line our pockets. Okay, so I find this a really interesting race. I mean, Brooklyn politics in particular is so interesting because it's such a large borough, and it really does come down to neighborhood and the power of the neighborhood. So in terms of the Democratic Party itself, you have a chair that just announced he's stepping down, Frank Sedio, in Brooklyn. Where's the establishment? I mean, is one person saying go for this? What's happening with the power dynamics?
Yeah, it's switching over to a current assemblywoman from central Brooklyn. Her name's Rodney's Bichot, who's down in East Flatbush, Canarsie, and she'll be stepping up. And it should be interesting. I mean, she's not a hyper progressive, but
do they pull strings? I mean, for people who don't understand, New York City politics is so crazy and layered, and you hear corruption in Tammany Hall, and the party boss is doing. And we saw that with Joe Crowley, the Queens machine and the Brooklyn machine. But what does the machine actually do?
I'm going to be so honest with you, Nomi. I don't even know how that transition to power happened. It's just I saw the article that Frank Sedio was stepping down, and I saw the article that Rodney was going to be the next one. I don't know when it was voted on or who voted or what. Yeah,
I mean, when I ran, I was blown away with going to the Brooklyn Democratic Party's big event. There, they had all the candidates come in. You had to speak, to the whole Brooklyn Democrat. There were thousands. I don't even know how many members there were. And from what I learned is a lot of these people didn't even know that they were part of the Brooklyn Party, and they're supposed to vote. So. I mean, there were empty seats. I mean, hundreds of empty seats. So this is just mind blowing to me. That's like if we had the Democratic Convention and you're supposed to have 3,000 delegates, and 2,000 of the delegates don't even know that they're delegates, and so they don't show up.
Yeah, that's exactly how the county committee is in Brooklyn and throughout New York City.
Yeah. So. Anyways, Jabari, very exciting. Anything coming up where people can learn about your race and support you in any way?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in New York City and you want to get involved, our website now has just a running list of we're canvassing all the time. So if you want to come and knock on some doors, I know it's cold. If not, just sign up to volunteer. There's other ways to plug in with data and fundraising and all the good stuff. Okay, last question. Yeah. Biggest lesson you learned from the last time around? You got to meet people where they are. Not everyone wants to hear about, a socialist revolution. Sometimes they just want to hear more about the bikes that just got installed on the sidewalk, or whether or not they're going to get evicted. And there's room for political education in there. But there's a lot of buy-in from just hearing out people's direct immediate needs and trying to address those. That is a great piece of advice. Jabari Brisport, thank you for joining the show. Thank you. Thanks, Nomi. Good luck in the next few months. Thanks so much.